This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
All right, everybody, we are back. Happy Friday. Hope y'all are having a great day, great start to your weekend, and no better way to start it off than having a conversation here on Setting the Pace with Derek Schultz. You just heard him at the tail end of the last episode, but he's here to talk Pacers basketball with us now. Derek, how are you doing, my friend?
It's great to see you guys. How's the summer been? It hasn't really been a summer, has it? Because didn't the Pacers just play like 4 weeks ago?
Blink so fast.
Yeah.
In some instances, it feels like a lifetime ago. In others, I cannot believe they were in the NBA Finals just last month. You know, Schultz, as you can see, like I got sleeves on. It just doesn't feel the same. I miss the days you're coming on after a win. Yeah, I got the pale skin going on, but we got a lot to talk about. A month later, a little bit of a doomer and gloomer, but always great to have you back.
Yeah, and it's great to be on, and onward and upward. That's kind of my. There was nothing, guys, that was going to bring me down from what the Pacers did last year, and I understand that obviously the Halliburton injury in Game 7, and then the Turner stuff and all that. But I don't know. I'm usually a pessimist. I've been a Pacers optimist for the last couple of weeks, so I'm looking forward to continuing that on this episode today.
Yeah, but let's talk about the optimism going into next season. I think a lot of people are counting the Pacers out. It kind of feels like this is a team that's going to have their backs against the wall a little bit without, Miles Turner leaving for Milwaukee, and of course Tyrese Halliburton out for the year. But this is a squad that still believes in themselves. They're still pretty hungry. What are your thoughts on the makeup of this team heading into next season?
Yeah, the situation just kind of is what it is, right, Alex? But I will say this. I've been in this town for almost 20 years. I've covered sports for basically that entire time. And historically speaking, now this hasn't always been the case. There have been teams that have been not really talked about or doubted that have ended up not being worth talked about, and they were worth being doubted. But in a majority of cases, when Indiana major pro sports teams, and I'll include some of the college teams in here, Purdue is big into this too. When they've been slept on, those are when they've had their best seasons. So, and I don't even mean best like, oh, they've gone out and gone to the finals, or they've, gone to the Final Four or something like that. I just mean like they've had really fun, productive seasons. Like the 2012 Colts is a great example. Like nobody thought they were going to do anything. And boy, that was such a fun year. They won 11 games. It was Andrew Luck's rookie year. They have the buzzer beating win against the Lions. The Pacers 2 years ago. I think we thought going after 23, you're like, okay, like things are, moving in the right direction. They're pretty good. They're pretty competitive. Nobody thought that team was going to go to the conference finals. It was insane. It was awesome. And that's what, and even last year with the finals run, I don't think people really thought that they were going to do that as well. So, when the expectations are low, generally speaking, I like to think that the teams come in and perform at a high level. But look, it's that said, it's going to be an uphill climb. It's going to be difficult. You could take any, cliche that you want that shows difficulty, roll the boulder up the hill, whatever it is, because you don't have, your most important player and another really important starter. I know people want to throw daggers at Miles on the way out, but let's face it, he was really important to the Pacers. They're not in the finals without him. I believe that definitively. Say what you want about his performance in said finals. So replacing those two with the center rotation as it is, and, minusing Halliburton and how important he is in the entire mix, obviously that's not a recipe for success, but I'm still looking forward to the season in the sense that I think this group has a lot of fight in them. You've got contract type years for Siakam and for Nesmith, who's been playing on a bargain deal. You've got some young players like Johnny Furphy, who we just saw in Vegas, who might kind of crack into the rotation now. I'm interested to see what they put on the table next year without Halliburton and without Turner.
That would be unfair to continuously raise expectations. Conference finals, NBA finals, now you got to win it all. I think we know that the expectations are lower, but is there a scenario that maybe if this Pacers team fights and makes the playoffs and or maybe wins the playoff series, that could be considered a very successful season for this group as they look to get Tyrese Halliburton back, as they look to now say, hey, we got a little bit more flexibility cap-wise. We have the time to replace a Miles Turner in the offseason. Is there a scenario where we can build off of a lot of momentum like that compared to maybe where we are right now, kind of knowing, all right, you know what, it's only going to be taking a step back next year?
Yeah, to your point, Facci, progress isn't always linear. And I think given the circumstances there is a way for the Pacers to make progress next year without obviously, winning the championship or going beyond what they did this past year, which was right on the doorstep of winning the whole thing. I remain adamant and I am, and I don't mean to turn this into a tanking conversation, but I just kind of want to nip this in the bud. There are circumstances where I think it is beneficial to tank, and I have argued for tanking. It's very rare, but I have done that. I actually think that it's very important that they go out and win basketball games, and I think that'd be a much more productive thing than trying to maximize the losses. Oh, they got their first round pick back, so what are they doing? They gotta lose. They gotta try to win 25 games. Look, this roster could roll out of bed with what they have right now and win 35, 36, 37 games easily. I've no doubt in my mind that they would do that, like bare minimum, like that I think is like almost like the floor for this team next year. So I do think it's important for them to get in the playoffs and be competitive and win a series, I think would be terrific. And, you're going to have the elements of the fan base that say, well, what's the point? They're not going to win the championship, so who cares? I'm not going to convert those people. If that's how you consume sports, I feel sorry for you. Championship or bust and rings culture and stuff, and anything that's not the championship is a failure. I don't process sports like that. So if this Pacers team, let's say they're the 6th seed and they play Orlando in the first round and they beat them in a 7-game series, woohoo! That's great. I'm not going to throw a parade over it, but I'll be watching those games and I'll be excited about that and I'll be rooting for that outcome. That would be wonderful. So I just think there's still something to play for next year. I know it's hard. I know people are down, but entertainment is what I'm going for. Entertainment and growth. Those are the two things that I want. And the Pacers play a very entertaining style of basketball. I think they'll continue to do so, even with the most entertaining player in Halliburton not in the lineup. And I do think that there is some real growth potential for some of their young players as well, because obviously they're going to have the opportunity to really showcase themselves now with an opportunity that they likely wouldn't have had with a veteran-laden team coming back, with if you were to assume that Turner and Halliburton were going to be back, which is probably what we thought going into Game 7.
Entertainment is what the fans are here for on Setting the Pace, and you just gave us some of that with that great, mocking of the voice of the fans that say championship or bust. I was thoroughly enjoying that voice. I hope you can give us some more throughout this episode. But you talk about the center position. Obviously, it is a loss without Miles because what you're trying to replace is going to be difficult. But how much more difficult is it going to be to replace Miles without Tyrese Halliburton? Because I think that's another aspect of it that's lost. You talk about just losing Miles, but like how much would Miles have regressed as a player without Tyrese Halliburton being that table setter for him? And then now how do the other centers on this roster function without a guy like Tyrese? And I know Nembhard and McConnell are capable, I'm just saying, but they're not at that same level.
Yeah, and look, I know you've had Chad on and you've interacted with Kevin Pritchard, and those are great guys and all of that. I know that the Pacers company line has been that the Halliburton injury kind of didn't change things in the Turner talks. Kind of like I'll go to my grave believing that they would have won Game 7 if Halliburton had been healthy.
Me too.
To me, it changed the arithmetic for the Turner situation. It turned a situation where you got to bring Turner back because Halliburton's back in the fold into, okay, we're going to try to bring Turner back, but at the same time, if he goes, maybe we won't be completely heartbroken. That's the way, even though I do think that the Pacers were surprised that Milwaukee swooped in and did what they did. Don't get me wrong. But I do think that the approach changed. I think everything changed. It had to change when Halliburton was writhing on the on the floor in pain like that. But this center rotation, as much as I'm intrigued, I'm also like equally mortified, if that makes sense, because you're relying heavily on two guys that are coming off of blown Achilles. First off, I really like Isaiah Jackson. I like his game. I think he showed a lot of improvement before the injury. I still worry, fouls wise with him about playing a lot of minutes. And last time I checked, the NBA foul limit is staying where it is. So we'll have to see. He's going to have to improve there. I've never really been a Wiseman guy. I've never really seen it. And I really think, we need to kind of get to a point where we just all kind of collectively decide that where you're drafted there's an expiration date on that and when that matters. Like I don't really want to hear about, hey, he was drafted second 5 years ago. Okay, well, 5 years ago I was working a part-time job in an Amazon factory and I thought my career was over. You know what I mean? Like things change in 5 years. But at the same time, it's worth the flyer. It's worth the flyer to have somebody like that in there and just kind of see what you have. And he's been with the team. There's familiarity there. He's been working out with them. So I do think that there can be an advantage to, like I said, with the Turner situation being what it is, and this being a quote unquote gap year, that the Pacers can see what they have. And then, Jay Huff is a contract that you want. He seems to be a good player. He seems to be ready for a new role after getting really legitimate minutes for the first time as NBA player last year in Memphis. So, hey, why not? And see what you have there. But, I don't necessarily see somebody emerging as a bona fide starter out of that group. But if it does happen, then wonderful. I'm not going to write that off. I do think that there's a world where Isaiah Jackson takes that next step. I just think it probably becomes a lot tougher coming off the blown Achilles. And I think Huff does a lot of the things that is a perfect fit. He seems to have all the strengths that the Pacers offense would want.
I like me some Jay Huff, but I'm right now I'm more in love with the idea of Jay Huff. We got to see him deliver. We got to see that, because we obviously know this was not someone that Indiana had to give a lot up for. You're talking about like a second round pick and like a swap of second round picks. So it's not like you traded a lot, but I think that this is a really good opportunity for Indiana to get a hard look at this team, in specific the role players, to know that, hey, like, you have 1 year to put a very competitive team right in place for when Halliburton comes back. And what that means is get a hard look at a Jarris Walker, get a hard look at like a Johnny Furphy. Could he take the next step? Get a hard look at a Ben Shepherd. Like, okay, Benedict Mathurin, get the answers. Is he here long term or not? I think this is a great opportunity for Indiana to be able to, a year ago they said a lot of our development or improvement is going to come from within. It sounds like another one of those type of years. When you leave the roster almost essentially untouched, you bring in Cam Jones, you bring in Taylor Peter, you bring in Jay Huff. That's about the changes that you made. Do you feel that success could, actually I mentioned before, could it be a playoff win? Could it actually, a series win? Could it be getting answers on all of these role players before they perhaps sign their next deal?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me, what do I want from the Pacers next year? Do I want them to win a playoff series, or do I want them to know definitively if Ben Mathurin deserves a contract extension? Or, some of these other answers that are so, or that Jarris Walker is going to be a starter caliber NBA player. I'd probably want the long-term answers, right? Not the first, not the first round series. First round series would be nice. So you're right, Facci, but I think that kind of adds to the excitement of, and kind of underlines the point of why next year is still important. Like you can't flush next year.
I agree.
Next year determines a lot for what this team and the decision makers are, and what they're going to do here moving forward, because there have been easy decisions in this build, like trading Pascal Siakam with what you gave up. That was an easy decision.
Two picks for each.
Yeah.
All of those. There was
sure. That's an easy decision. The Halliburton contract, that's a no-brainer. It's an easy decision. Now, it's about to be a lot more difficult. We thought the Turner thing was a difficult decision. It's going to get progressively more difficult from here with some of these other players. So, that's what I'm really intrigued by, the long-term answers to short-term questions that we still have, because there are a lot of them on this roster right now.
And another name that could make a lot of sense in the trade, because I think every team would want him on their roster, is Aaron Nesmith. And he doesn't make that much, but he is due for an extension. I don't want to see him go. I think he means too much to this team and what they represent. But for not having Tyrese around next year, what are your expectations for an Aaron Nesmith? Because he's not the most gifted offensive player with it just being on-ball creation for himself, but he is very much a beneficiary of others kind of setting him up and taking advantage of opportunities. So what are you kind of expecting for Aaron Nesmith next year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting what we always expect from him to, be a gamer and be as reliable as he's always been. But I think what's interesting, guys, is that Nesmith has been such like the lunch paley type. I'm reaching in the cliche bin again, but like, glue guy and lunch pail guy. And you forget the fact that the dude is 25 years old still. He'll turn 26 when the season starts. Like there still might be more to come from Nesmith. Like we look at him like, I looked at Dale Davis when he was 32. And it's like, I know they're completely different players, but I'm saying like,
he doesn't have an age. Like he is still very young, but we've just accepted he's just this very solid role player who will
seasoned vet, right?
As they come, without assuming that, maybe he could score 20 points randomly in 5 minutes against the Knicks in a playoff game and swing it. Or, have these outbursts that come out of nowhere that all of a sudden it's like, this is a guy that is continuously getting better year after year. So that's a great point.
I just wonder if there is, to answer your question, Alex, I wonder if there, when we talk about, okay, you're minusing Turner and you're minusing Halliburton and who's going to kind of pick up the pieces offensively. I do wonder if there's maybe more of a, what the slice of the pie is going to be for Nesmith. And if I'm him, I don't want to change too much about who I am because I've been really effective playing the role that I am. But of course, I want to do more and I want to have better numbers and things like that because, I want to show out. I want to, he knows that, and he took the contract and, sometimes that ends up happening where it ages bad for the player because it turns into kind of a bargain deal. But he was the NBA's biggest bargain these last couple of years. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was worth at least double, if not 2.5 times what he was being paid by the Pacers, given his productivity. And I think secretly he knows that. And I think he's going to want to show out and be able to cash in the next time around. So there are a lot of motivating factors for a lot of players on the Pacers going into next year. But I think Nesmith might be the most motivated, knowing that, hey, there's a chance for me to have an even bigger role, just overall, not just offensively, defensively too. And guess what? I've got to showcase myself even more here in a Halliburton and Turner-less world for this team and really make it worth my while financially.
Does it feel like, the two guys that are extension eligible, Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith, does it feel like the town is big enough for the both of them? Because if they both want to get paid, I don't think they're two players that have any issues with each other by any means at all. But if they both want to get paid and they're both deserving of getting paid, we talked about Nesmith on an $11 million contract. That could easily be a $20 million guy. Easily. I think he could totally find himself in a Bruce Brown situation where some team would pay him that because he fits every team. Then you got a Benedict Mathurin who obviously probably sees himself as someone who, would be in line with some of those other guys in his draft class that are signing extensions for $125 million plus. That could totally be an overpay. But as long as they're both here in Indiana, they can't both start because you already have a Tyrese Halliburton and you have an Andrew Nembhard. Does it feel like Indiana might have to choose between one of those players, or do you think, hey, they can work this out? Both guys will be fine. Maybe one of them's totally fine coming off of the bench. Maybe one of them's not.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of goes into the hard decisions that we were talking about. I'm glad that I don't have to make that call. I think, can they coexist and can they both get paid? I mean, yeah, I guess. I guess we would have to, dig into Alex's brain for cap and things like that and projected deals. But it's hard to even project what Mathurin is going to be. Like, I still have no idea. Like, you could talk me into him just taking off and being like almost like a franchise level or a number 2 level guy. And you can also talk me into him just, not getting the extension and being a 20-point per game scorer for a 25-win team for the rest of his career too. I've always felt like the ceiling was higher with Mathurin, but the floor is higher with Nesmith, right? Because I think you just know a little bit more of what you're going to get with Nesmith than you do with Mathurin. But, there were times in that Thunder series where he saved the day, and that was, every time that I was feeling like I was out on Mathurin, he would have a performance and just kind of pull me right back in. But I still feel like in the grand scheme of things, he feels like the square peg round hole of this roster. And, but with Halliburton and Turner out, and him having the ability to have a bigger role. Maybe that changes this year, but it's got to happen now. Because we can't wait on that forever.
I'll be interested to see how the Pacers handle the Mathurin situation, because if he does start, he's going to want a much bigger contract than if he were coming off the bench being a sixth man. And of course, I think he's going to feel like he doesn't think he's a sixth man. I think he feels like he's a starter. And if they don't want to pay him starter money, that's going to be problematic. I kind of wonder, and this is just my thinking. So I'm reading the tea leaves here from what I've heard Kevin say, what I've heard Chad say. They're like, we're eager to make a trade. And they've even emphasized this season. I wonder if they're afraid of letting Mathurin get to free agency, because we saw what just happened with Miles Turner, right? Like, that's a big thing to look at. Do they really want to compete with other teams that could have cap space? I know right now restricted free agency in the 2025 offseason has been terrible, but when I asked Chad about it, he said 2026, there's going to be more bidders out there that can have money. So instead of losing Mathurin for nothing or getting stuck where you have to end up paying him a ton of money that you don't really want to pay him, to me, it almost feels like perfect, case scenario here to allow him to play, showcase what he can do, and if he pops, now his value's at an all-time high. Trade him at the deadline because, like you said, square peg, round hole, and maybe go out there and find a piece that actually fits what you're trying to do with your roster. I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but that's just kind of how I'm reading things right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's still a trade candidate, absolutely. But again, like, this goes back to, you could talk me into any scenario with Mathurin, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, I could see that happening. I mean, it's just, yes. he is a complete wild card. I don't know. I wish I could give you a I don't think anybody on this show can give you, or anybody anywhere can give you a definitive answer on what he's going to end up being. But you're right. You make a great point, Alex, about the Turner thing. You almost give it a pass because they were 48 minutes away from a championship by keeping him, right? Mm-hmm. And he's had 10 years here, and he did his time, and okay, it's good for the Pacers are moving on, Turner's moving on, that's fine. But that can't be your standard business practice of letting assets walk out the door for nothing. So and I think they Pritchard and Buchanan and the Pacers brass, they know that. So yeah, he could absolutely be a trade candidate, and maybe that's what makes the most sense, even if he flourishes next year in this new role, because they know when Halliburton comes back, that role is going to change. I'm not saying that Mathurin automatically goes back to the bench then, but that role will change and it'll look different for him. But I do wonder, but what if Nesmith plays well as well, and then but wait, Mathurin's taking off to the point that it can't be ignored, and you have to bring him back. I mean, we could kind of go in circles on this all day. It's not going to be an easy decision to make, whatever it is. But, if you're asking me my prediction of the most likely scenario, I think it's exactly what you just said. Mathurin, even if he doesn't have a great year, but still has a good and productive year, I think he is somebody that other teams would covet and want. And if you're not planning on bringing him back, then you end up making that trade and getting somebody that's a better fit for what you have when Halliburton returns.
I definitely believe in him long term. I feel like if a change of scenery, he feels like the kind of guy that I would probably do wonders for. Like, I could just see him instantly averaging over 20 points per game, but just like you said, on probably a team that's not that great, where they've given him the keys, they give him the green light, any other saying that you want. However, looking at this Pacers team right now, they traded back for their 2026 first round pick. They did it obviously before the Halliburton injury. I love it. Now that opens up a lot of flexibility for them in terms of trading future assets. You start to look at this team. There's already a lot of guys under contract long term. Then there's the next crop of your Jarris Walkers, your Johnny Furphys, your Cam Jones and Taylor Peters and those type of players. Does it feel like you really need more draft picks to bring in, or does it feel like this is a move when you traded for that 2026 first round pick, you're looking to package it and make another big deal? Just like Alex said, it feels like the itch is there. I just feel like this Pacers team, they've struggled to win and develop at the same time, and you got a lot of guys that are already waiting for playing time. The idea of bringing in more draft picks, to me, almost feels like you're instantly writing them off for year one, as that guy's probably not going to play anywhere. Does it feel like that 2026 pick is maybe bound to get traded?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the impetus for doing that deal is to create that sort of flexibility to be able to do that. So sure. I don't know if it's guaranteed that they trade that pick. Just like, when they had 2 picks this year and, I was thinking to myself, are they going to end up using both of these or, making trades and things like that? And they ended up doing it. So sometimes they end up kind of going against the grain when it comes to something like that. But, talking about the back of the roster, we already kind of talked about Jarris Walker and needing to show that, okay, he's a rotational piece at the very least, if not, somebody that can really kind of come in and help you. But I think maybe at this point, I know they love Johnny Furphy, and he had a really nice summer league performance. Probably could have shot the ball better, but outside of that, I think he did everything that you would have wanted him to do. And I'm not just talking about poster dunks. I mean, defense and other things as well. He's a guy that's kind of knocking on the door of being a rotational guy as well. And, the Taylor Peter one, I was kind of like, he's a small school guy, but he's like 23. What are we doing? And then you watch him play and you're like, okay, yeah, he looks like a pacer. Like he's smart. You know what I mean? Like they draft guys that you put them on the floor, and I know there's a learning curve for everybody, but they seem to have the shortest one. Like these guys that they draft, they always know what they're doing. Like Furphy knew right away, like right, young, raw, the whole deal, but he has a nose for the basketball. He knows how to play. And the Pacers seem to be able to really kind of key in and identify those guys. So I'm intrigued by those. I don't think those guys are going to play, maybe outside of Walker, much of a factor for this year, but I do think Furphy's going to see the court a little bit more. But again, kind of going back to it with trade flexibility and picks, what you hope is that somebody back there, maybe it's Furphy, maybe it's Walker, takes a little bit of a leap, and then that makes it easier for Mathurin trades and trading future picks and things like that, because you feel a little more solidified in what you already have in the house.
I just want to say, you bring up Taylor Peter. I appreciate when you were on the radio filling in maybe it was a week or so ago, you called him the Summer Sirs, and I stole that from you, just so you know. I wanted to make sure I said it publicly on this podcast. I thought Summer Sirs was great, number one. And number two, you bring up Taylor Peter. My friend, I was over at his house last weekend, and his son's like 3.5, loves shooting on his little basketball goal and just saying, I'm playing like the Pacers. I said, okay. I said, I'm going to shoot like Pascal. I said, Pascal's not on the Pacers. He said, shoot like Peter. I'm like, oh, he's that committed to the Pacers summer league team that he knows who's on the roster for everybody. So shout out Ezra. I wanted to give him a shout out, but I just thought it was great because he's like pulling up from three. He's like, Enrique Freeman for three. Like, this is a dedicated kid right here to the Pacers. So David, you're doing a great job. But anyway, just summer league in general, obviously, different team, no first round draft picks on it. They go 3-2. They had some success, but how much can you really take away from the summer league in terms of what you see from these players?
I think, and I don't remember. I know other people have said this, so I don't even know if it credits to one person. But my philosophy on summer league is the same as many others, and it's just I just don't want second year or third year players to look bad. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just I don't care if you look great necessarily. You don't have to look great to me. Just don't look. The big red flag to me is guys that have kind of been through it a couple of times and then they come back and you're like in year 3 and you're still like, what are you doing out there, man? That's the problem for me. So look good, great, just don't look bad. And I think basically you would say that about all of the key Pacers that we had our eyes on. Like even Cam Jones, who was fine, right? Like was fine. And I didn't watch every game like you guys did, but when I tuned in, I thought he was okay. He still didn't look bad, right? He didn't look lost. He didn't look like he didn't belong on the floor with some of the other players there. And I think Furphy played very well when I saw, and I thought Peter did pretty well too. Yeah. Kind of all things considered. And then, you have some other guys on there that, we still have to kind of make determinations on, Enrique Freeman and people like that. But I didn't think anybody out there kind of like looked lost. But yeah, to answer your question, the summer league stuff you take with the biggest grain of salt possible. But I think the fact that the Pacers' young players look like they belonged, and the guys that had kind of been through it, not just the rookies, but the guys that had been through it before, I think that gives you a lot of good feeling moving forward.
Yeah, one of the things I've been curious is, like, we saw Halliburton come off one of the clutchest, maybe the clutchest years any player has ever had. I know that might sound like an exaggeration, but I really don't think it was. Who do you anticipate maybe to kind of like take the last shot at the end, or do you think this is going to be a little bit of hot potato swinging around, see who's got the hot hand or who could be your closer? Because right now there's no like definitive guy, but there are guys that have been in big moments on this Pacers team.
I forgot where I saw this, but I think it was from the beginning of the 23-24 season through the playoffs. Halliburton was like 13 of 15 from the floor in game tying or game winning shots in the final minute. Like, yeah, like Facci, I know, and I'm a setting the pace listener. I know you've exaggerated on this show before. That is a factual statement. All right. Like, let's just go ahead and say, like, it was the greatest clutch. It was certainly the greatest clutch postseason that we've ever seen. But really, like, if you factor in the Milwaukee 4-point play and all that stuff too, like, it was the greatest clutch run that we've ever seen from an individual athlete, at least in the NBA. So it was incredible. I don't know, man. Like, to me, knee-jerk reaction, gut feeling on who's going to take the final shot. I know a lot of people would say like Siakam because he's the best player with Halliburton out, but the guy that I always feel supremely confident, even when he doesn't necessarily have a good game, is Nembhard.
I agree.
I just feel like it's going in.
A lot of people
every time. I feel like it's going in. He could be 1 of 8 from the field, and the shot clock, like that shot against the Knicks. It's kind of a busted play. The shot clock's running down. He just kind of hurls it up there, and it just felt like it was going to fall the whole way. And of course it did. And it saved the series, saved the game, probably saved the season. So, yeah, I think my answer would be the guy that I feel the best about would be Nembhard, but I still think that the player with the ball in his hands in those situations is going to be Pascal.
Yeah, I think Aaron Nesmith has proven himself too over time to just hit big shots, right? Like just in the moment, he hits them, even though Nembhard's probably got the factor of just like the Lakers game in his rookie season, the game he had against the Warriors, and then you think about the Knicks game last year, and then I think he had a game winner against the Mavericks when he was struggling too in the regular season without Tyrese. So, anytime I get a chance to say stay hard, get hard, stay hard, Nembhard, I will definitely say it on this podcast because it's my favorite thing to say. I forget who I stole it from Twitter, but thank you for putting that out there.
God, you're just stealing everything out.
I'm not original. I'm AI generated, man. That's what I do. But my last question for you is when you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference and you look at this version of this Pacers team, how do you think they stack up against some of these teams in the Eastern Conference now? I mean, we got some new look teams like Orlando. You mentioned them earlier. Atlanta's different. Milwaukee's a little bit different now. Obviously, Boston's different without Jason Tatum. The Pacers are different. Anybody else I'm missing? They're just different teams out there. The Pistons, I mean, they made some changes. So how do you think the Pacers stack up against the rest of the East?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're probably in that, I guess you'd say maybe third group. If we're going to take like Cleveland and New York and say maybe they have the least question marks, even though I don't feel super confident in being like, oh yeah, like the Cavs are a title contender. I don't know. It's just weird to say that with their and the Knicks just you guys know my history. The Knicks always find a way to screw it up. It feels like too. So, but let's just for the sake of this discussion, let's put them up at the top. But I think that they're in that. Probably in that second or third group. And maybe you say, okay, well, Orlando's going to take that next step or Detroit's going to take that next step. And if you want to put them ahead of the Pacers, I think you could do that. But the Celtics, I kind of go back and forth on, without Tatum. I don't love what the Bucks did. I don't think that they're going to be great next year. I just don't think that their roster makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying that like in a like, my girlfriend dumped me and now she's with the new, well, he's like, whatever. And I'm not trying to be like the vindictive, ex-boyfriend or something like that in the wake of the Turner thing. I didn't think it made sense before Turner. I didn't think it was great roster management before that. So I think they're right there in that mix with that group. If you asked me to predict what they would do right now, I'd say that they are the first team in the play-in. I think they'd be around the 7 or 8 range probably. But if they could get to that 6, that'd be terrific. And again, I'm just throwing that out there. Pacers magic. Cool. Sign me up for that. That ends up being the 3-6 series there in the first round. But I think that's probably where I would group them, just kind of loosely following what some of those other teams have done, and seeing where they are. I do think that people are forgetting, as good as Turner was for this team, and obviously Halliburton being Halliburton, it's a really good roster, and it's guys that just fight like hell. It's just something about that too. And they're going to play, the Halliburton with TJ McConnell with the written piece just this week. That's how I expect the Pacers to play. They know people are going to be counting them out, and it sounds cliche and all of that, but the Pacers, they live up to that. They're a very difficult team to play, even without Halliburton out there.
Yeah, no, they really do. And going to your point back about the Bucks roster, and I saw something on Twitter, showed all their faces and their names, and it was like, if you put your finger over Giannis's face, it's gross. I mean, that roster is not good at all, and it's just like, if there's a scenario where Giannis isn't there in the future, it's going to be Turner and a whole bunch of so-so guards and just like players that are not going to be there long term. So for the Bucks, it is what it is. For the Pacers, hey, obviously we're going to hope for the best. We're going to go for it. They're never going to be counted out. You don't want to write them off, because we've seen everyone's done that time after time. It would be a mistake. So we'll see what happens. I think there's a lot of internal development that could be viewed as a success. I think if you see this team make it to the playoffs, that can be viewed as a success of their heart, as to like, hey, they're going to come back stronger. And I think that's what we wish we had this offseason, to say, we will be back. So I think a lot of this remains to be determined. But Derek, we appreciate you coming back on. It's always a pleasure having you on. We missed you, but please tell everybody where they could find you on social media and some of the awesome content that you're always putting out on the radio.
Yeah, at Schultz975 on X and Twitter. You can also check out my columns every other week on the IBJ.com, Indianapolis Business Journal. I rotate in with Mark Monteith, another longtime Pacers writer, and there's a lot of Pacers content in there, but Colts, IU, Purdue. About to be fall, about to be football, so we'll get to be watching another mediocre quarterback battle. So I'll keep you abreast with what's going on there. And then, occasionally, Alex had mentioned it, very rarely, but 5 or 6 times a year, I like to hop back on the bike, on the fan, and fill in for either Jake or John's show in the afternoon. And it's a lot of fun when I get the opportunity to do that, and to hang out with you guys as well on this show. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Always welcome. Yeah, we appreciate you.
I was going to say, the best thing I heard you say on this podcast tonight was that you listen to Setting the Pace regularly. I mean, that's just great to hear. Appreciate the support of the show. And of course, me and Facci are pumping out the podcast. So I know you probably can't catch up with everyone, but I do appreciate the ones you do tune in for, as we do pretty much daily. And we're probably going to cut back here in August just to go a little bit lighter schedule for us. But Derek, you do great work. We always enjoy having you on and your perspective on things. So thank you for doing that. And, make sure that everybody follows Derek on social media if you're not already. And even though he is a Purdue fan, we give him the benefit of the doubt. I know that you work for Purdue as well. So we accept that. It's a paying job. So go Purdue. I hate that I just said that.
It's boiler up, Alex. No, and then you say boiler up, and then I say hammer down.
Boiler down is what I say.
That's how we do it. I went to IU. Did you know that?
I think I did know that. You went to IU, but you work for Purdue, right?
Yeah. So I'm officially.
Every time I see you smiling out there with that little Purdue logo on, and I'm like, this is just sick. How do I like this guy so much? It makes me so sick.
I'm a childhood diehard Knicks fan, IU grad who turned as an adult into a Pacers appreciator and Purdue employee.
It's like you left your.
It is.
You left your childhood favorites for your rivals. It's weird.
Sold out.
It's very odd.
You are very Miles Turner ass selling out to the devil.
Yeah, we're not going to catch you in a Bucks jersey anytime soon, are we?
No, but you're going to catch me at a Chili's in the same side of the booth with my wife coming up here on Friday night. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, that's a great way to end this podcast. Pacer Nation, please give us a 5-star rating and review. Follow us on Twitter at PacersPodSTP. We will talk to y'all next week.